So today we thought we'd just give you some top tips about how to support your children at home with reading, because reading is, we call it the master skill at Morley Victoria, and it really is the be all and end all of everything. And it is, I know all of your children, they're all older now, and when I always say to them, what is the one thing that Mrs. Wood really wants you to be able to do before you go off and leave us and go to high school, they always say, reading. We know it's reading, Mrs. Wood. And I always say to them, I make no apology for that, because it is so important. Mr. Precious will bear me out with this. When we go up to the high school, under normal circumstances, when we go up to the high school and we go and we do lessons there as part of the transition process from year 6 into year 7, last time we went, it was a history lesson. So the first thing the teacher did was give the children 4 quite complex texts to read as a starting point. Now, if children can't access that, can't first of all mechanically read it and then understand what they've read, then they can't actually make a start on that history lesson. So it's really important that we do this. When you read the research around reading, it basically says the children who read really well achieve better than their peers right across the curriculum. So it's not just about English and reading and writing, that if your child is a really good reader, that they will achieve well across the subjects and across the whole curriculum, and therefore will do better in their end of year tests, in the SATs test at the end of year 6, and then moving on to GCSEs. Another interesting fact is, if you read with your child for 20 minutes a day, over the course of a year, they will be exposed to 1.8 million words, and that's absolutely fantastic, isn't it? But if you compare that to a child who only has 1 minute a day, their vocabulary and their exposure is only to 8,000 words. So that difference, that reading every day and that exposure to vocabulary and talking around a text is really important. And when I was watching a webinar at the weekend about reading, they were basically saying, I didn't realise this, that actually reading is the best exercise that you can do for your brain, and I didn't realise that. And basically it just helps your long-term memory and your brain to function better than anything else. And also it helps with mental health and relieving stress, which at the moment, you know, we all need to think about how we can do that. And just getting lost in a book, it's just a wonderful thing to be able to do, and we need to give our children that ability to do that. So Mr. Precious I'm going to hand over to Mr. Precious, and I'm going to talk to you about 10 top tips about what you can do at home.
The alliteration there.
I know, sorry, I couldn't get my tongue around those words.
Yes, right. So yeah, we aim this towards your older children, really. So that's what we go for years 4, 5 and 6, but also when they get to high school as well, some of these top tips will still stand, because Mrs. Wood said it doesn't stop when they get to high school. If anything, it increases the amount of reading they need to do in those lessons. So it's so important that they are confident readers and have the reading skills as well to be able to engage in those lessons and not get turned off history or geography or anything else it may be. First thing I suppose to say is just make sure the children are doing the Seesawing lessons. So the staff are there. We made sure that reading has been a priority on the home learning as well, as much as we can. Obviously nothing replaces the children being in school, but trying to replicate what we would do. So we have the reading challenges, listening to the stories that Mrs. Britton's been reading out, and just the reading lessons as well the staff are putting on there. And a lot of the staff are reading the stories, the class novels to the children, and doing the Magnificent 7 skills as well. So first thing and foremost is just make sure those children are doing, make somebody else in, doing those lessons that are on Seesaw for them, because they are, you know, trying to replicate what we can do in school. Just a couple of quotes, just sort of enforces what Mrs. Wood said at the start. So reading is the gateway skill that makes all the learning possible. That's Barack Obama. So that's just what we talked about there. That is, it is such an important skill, and without it, they will struggle moving through life, basically, not just high school, moving through life. It's such an important skill, which is why we value it so highly. And just Emma Watson, I'm reading so much and exposing myself to so many new ideas. It almost feels like the chemistry and the structure of my brain is changing so rapidly sometimes. And again, it's such a good way of learning. It's such a valuable thing to do, is the reading. We never stop. It's not just when they get to the end of Blue Band or whatever it may be, I can read now. They never stop reading and learning to read. And that's what this meeting will be about as well. So children are still at the beginning of their reading journey, and this is a journey that never should really end. We should be reading and learning all the way through, right into adulthood, right until we get through. And that's a nice quote. And that's from me, so I might write that down somewhere. Put that on the website, Mrs. Wood, I like that quote. So tip number 1, sounds simple, but yeah, read regularly. So at this stage, the majority of children will probably be tackling longer or more challenging texts. We're hoping for gone through. Obviously, they won't, not for all children, most children. That doesn't mean they need to sit and read for an hour a night, an hour and a half a night. It's that little and often is key, and how we support that little and often is we'll talk about as we go through the meetings. But just because they're getting older doesn't mean they have to sit and read for an hour and a half. If they do and they're into the book, brilliant, because that's what we'd like them to be able to do once they read for pleasure. But if it's becoming a battle, it's just that little and often is what we need to do. And to do this, it's just you modelling the enthusiasm towards reading, so making it a special time. So yeah, we're going to get your book out, talking about the book. Oh, somebody else has come in. 1 minute. There you go. Yeah, so it might seem a simple tip, but that regular reading, but also the little and often. Don't go overboard and say they have to read an hour and a half a night, unless they want to, of course. I've had sort of 2 experiences as a parent. I've had one where my daughter used to be the one that would sneak a lamp under the bed when it's bedtime to carry on reading. Couldn't get the book off her. And my son, I couldn't get him to read. So a lot of these tips I've tried myself and actually tried to do them at home, because they both had the different problems. Because Lucy would not stop reading at all, so she wouldn't go to bed, so I had to come and turn the lights off. Whereas Liam, it was just a real battle to get him to read. He didn't want to read. He wanted to be out running about, doing sports or whatever it may be. So I've had both sort of experiences from a parental point of view as well. So reading routines, as well as reading regularly, it's really important. This goes for everything with home learning as well, but with learning generally, but especially with home learning as well. It's getting into that routine. So when is the reading time? Is it in the morning? Is it when you're making tea? How are we recording the reading? Are we doing some of the book clubs, the quizzes? Are you just using the online reading record? It's making it a really calm, special time. So it's not just when you're trying to do a million and one things and the TV's in the background, there's the other children playing around, there's a phone buzzing. It's making sure that is a real special time, and just they know this is a reading time, a calming time, a relaxing time. And one of the top tips is just use it before bed. So get rid of the devices before bed. So if your child's got somebody who gets into those devices, they need to switch off before they go to sleep, because it disturbs sleeping patterns, and reading is a fantastic way to do that. So make sure before bed you can get some special reading time in as well, whichever works for your household. But it's making it special, making it a really nice time for them, to something to look forward to. Don't treat it as a chore or worse, a punishment, because that really turns them off reading. Tip number 3. So as they get older, like with everything, when the children get older, they don't always want you around as much as they used to want you around. So they do, but they won't tell you they do, particularly the older boys. We get to high school, the older girls, it's sort of stroppy teenager image, don't want you around, but actually they really do want you around. So it's how we stay an active role in their reading, but not in the sense that we sit with them and you read to me. So they need you because they need you to model being a good reader. They need you to model all the reading skills and being an active reader. They may be able to decode the words at this stage and read aloud, but it's about you being a good reader. And the best way to do that is to model your thought process as you're reading along with them. So a few ways you can do this. If it is a longer book, this is a really good way of doing it. I read a page, then you read a page, or I read 2 pages and you read a page. So it's getting you through, maybe it's a longer challenging text, but also you're then modeling those discussions as well. Listen to audiobooks. So if you've got a reading a long novel, it doesn't have to be the school book, it could be a book you're reading at home. Get an audiobook down, have a nice time, get a nice relaxing time going, listen to the audiobook of it, and then have a discussion around it afterwards. Another thing you can do is literally just read to them as well. They will still like you just to read to them as well. Another thing you could do is if you both get a copy of the same book you're reading. So it's more of a book club side thing. So if you both got a book, say you're reading that, that book looks really interesting, but I've never read that book before. And say, right, by next week, I want to read to chapter 3. And then you have a discussion around what you've read so far and share those inferences. So you're making it more of a thing that you're doing together, as opposed to you being that role of sit down, you need to read to me, writing your reading record. You're actually making it as a hobby, an interest, and just sharing that passion for reading as well. Some just good tips there to still maintain an active role within reading as a parent as you get older. Okay, so this is a poem. I'm just going to highlight this poem. So it highlights 800 of the worst irregularities in the English spelling and pronunciation. So if you have a little read of it, and you'll start to see, and this is just the first 2 verses, a lot more verses than this. So hopefully you get the idea. So the point I'm making here is, if a child can read this entire poem without making a mistake, well, frankly, I'd be amazed, because it's very difficult to do. And the English language is a difficult language to learn. And what children tend to do, as they get older, they start to panic if they can't read a word, or panic if they pronounce something wrong. They don't like to think, because they see themselves as a reader. So it's really important that we allow children to know it's still okay to misread words. It's absolutely fine. And again, this is something you can model as you're reading as well. Because otherwise, what they tend to do is they get themselves het up a little bit. They go, I can't dare to misread a word. I'm a good reader. I'm at this blue band, or I'm an independent reader. I can't read this. It's still okay to misread a word. And it's making sure they understand that. It's that lifelong process of learning, and get them involved with that one. So again, modelling this. If you ever get to read that poem together, that's a really good point, interesting thing to do. It's such a difficult thing to do, and just look back and realise how many irregularities there are in the English language. Tip number 5, and this is the ideal really. It's, as we said earlier, books are designed primarily to be enjoyed. That's what they're there for, designed for pleasure. So ideally, we want children to develop that love of reading, not because we're telling them to, or because we're saying you've got to do this at school, because they want to read. Because if they want to read, that vocabulary they'll be exposed to, the ideas they'll be exposed to, the impact on the writing will be, well, basically immeasurable really. It'll have such an impact on their entire academic life, and also moving forward into adult life. So it's how we do this. So again, it's creating that special time, it's sharing the books, it's making sure that they know if it's a book they're particularly enjoying, and we tell this at school, that they're not battling through that book. So it's not a case of, if it's a really long novel, they've got 2 chapters in, it's not for them, and we make them read it all the way through. It's a case of, actually, that's part of the reading experience. We weren't enjoying that book, right, we'll change that book, and we'll go for another book. So it's making sure that actually it's something they love, because one of the biggest things they'll need as they move forward into high school and through primary school is reading stamina. That's being able to read for longer periods, but again, taking in what they're reading. Now, the single biggest way to do that is to practice reading more. Now, if they're wanting to read, that will in turn increase their stamina, which will have a massive impact on them academically moving through. So it's really making sure that, you know, reading is something, it's a joy, it's a hobby. It's easy with some children pick it up, some children don't like it. So I tried many different things in my son, lots of different genres, lots of different books. We used to go to different graphic novels and things like that. I tried lots of different things to get him into something that he actually enjoyed reading. So it can be a battle with some children, some still change it on, but ideally, yes, we want them to enjoy reading, because that'll have a massive impact moving forward. Tip 6. So as they get older, we look at these reading skills. So the Magnificent 7, which you should have a bookmark with, looks a bit like that, well, exactly like that actually. And these are the reading skills that we teach in our reading lessons as well. Obviously, we're not expecting you guys to teach every single skill of this and teach like a reading lesson, but when you've got the bookmark at hand, it may be just nice just to talk over some of these skills and then see if they practice those in amongst their reading. And equally, if you're reading with them or reading the same books as them, practice some of the skills. So let's practice summarising. So what happened in that last chapter? Can we summarise it? Can we do that in a minute? Can we tell what happened in the last chapter? What do you think is going to happen next? The prediction questions. Can we connect it? It's a big thing about making learning links. So we're talking about a book that's set in World War II. Do you know anything about World War II? Is it the seaside? What do you know about the seaside? So I'm not saying you need to be a teacher and teach all these skills, but they're really handy to have that bookmark with you all the time and just go over these skills, because we do that in school. So it will just really help embed these skills in with the reading. There is one skill in particular that children do find difficult. A few reasons for it. One, because it's quite a hard skill to make as an inference skill. So these are the how do you know that, what might happen if, why did that happen, do you think it's happening, why do you think it's happening. They have to be able to be an active reader and use those other skills to join the dots about what they're reading. The other thing is they find really difficult is because it's not always one right answer. Lots of children just like there to be a single correct answer. And there isn't always a differences because you have different inferences, you have difference of opinion. And some children, particularly children that have always got things right, want to know that as the exact right answer. They don't like to have differences in answers. So it's really good thing that you can model this as well. So if you're doing your read a page, you read a page, or audio books or book club, whatever way you're supporting a child reading, is you talk about your inferences as well. And if you have a difference of opinion, fantastic. And then talk about why you think it is. Drop in the hints you've got from the story, why you think it's going to go this way, how you know that character is feeling the way they're feeling. It's a really difficult skill for children to grasp, but it's one we can practice and modelling and make sure they understand that there can be more than one inference and there can be different ways and you can have different interpretations of things, because that is something that children can struggle with actually as they get older. Tip number 8. Children, again, as they get older, can often develop a preference for a genre or even a particular author, or even just read books over and over and over again because it's their favourite book. Obviously, the benefits of reading talk around vocabulary, around the impact on their writing, around their knowledge of the world, general knowledge. They won't get the same impact if they just read that same author or exposed to the same type of genre all the time, even if they do have a preference for it. So it's trying to get in. We do this in school, but also at home, a range of texts. So trying to find some poems that you might be interested. If there's a particular topic at school that sparks an interest, try to find some non-fiction books around that. If it's something that's been a topic that I've heard on the radio or at school, if it's climate change or anything like that, then get some newspapers out. We have a newspaper called The Week that the kids love reading every week. And it's a newspaper designed for children. It's fantastic. It really piques their interest and it gets them reading lots of non-fiction without actually, realizing this is a non-fiction book. So if it's anything, just try to get them reading around that topic, really. It's a big ask, it's a difficult one, but if you can get them reading that range of text, it has, again, lots of benefits in the long run. Number 9, again, let's talk about books. So this is what we really need to do. To get those higher level skills, the first thing we need to be able to do is verbalise and talk about those higher level skills. Before I can write anything down, never mind that, we need to be able to talk about them. So it's really important we talk about these books. And that is before you read the book, looking at the setting, looking at the characters, making learning links to their own experiences. Have you ever felt like that? Have you been in that situation? Really drawing out of them those deeper level thinking skills just by talking and using those magnificent 7 skills. Linking to things I've seen on TV or things I've read about, anything like that, and just get really discussing those texts, because that is, again, those high level skills comes from verbalising, it comes from talking. And again, talking about it before, during and after. So if you're just not even about reading a book, just talking about the book they've read. So just when you're in the car, dropping in what have you read that's last, what I've read about previously, what is happening in the next chapter, just getting that discussion, because that really, really does have a benefit for them. And the last one, I've got a word up there. So this is a book we use as training. This just, again, just sort of highlights the issues you might have as adults and of children as well. So there's a book called The Curriculum Gilomorphy to Coherence. Now, when we did this in the staff meeting, there's lots of children. I didn't know what the word was. I don't think anybody actually knew what the word was. Some staff tried to figure out what the word was, but didn't want to admit they didn't know what the word was. Some staff went away and Googled the word so they knew what it was. Some staff just sat there hoping we wouldn't ask them what the word meant and just tried to go past it because I felt actually I should know what that word means. For those that don't know what it means, it's a confused jumble or medley of things. But that reflects in lots of children. They might be able to read the word, but they don't know what the word means. And lots of children then feel that if they don't know what that word means, they don't want to delve into it and discuss the vocabulary. They just feel like, oh, I should know what that means because I can read it. And it's really the understanding of that vocabulary and then being able to apply that vocabulary in different contexts, which is the key that gets into that next level. So it's really important we're looking at vocabulary, that we spend a lot of time looking at vocabulary. So if there's a word that you're reading and the child might have read it beautifully, and you ask them, what do you think that means? And they can't tell you, that's a great time then to just discuss and have a really good discussion around that word. The strategy you can use, so you can look around the surrounding words, to look at the words at the start of the sentence, the end of the sentence, So what could that word be replaced with? Looking at the context of the sentence. It's sometimes that they might be familiar with a root word. So, for example, faith, they might know the word faith. So faithfulness, you might be able to work out what that word means from using the root word. It might be that they look at a familiar prefix or suffix. So pre, they might have come across pre before, and then determine, they have to put that together. It might just be you need to get a thesaurus out. And that's fantastic. So one of my biggest tips is to have a thesaurus and a dictionary at hand when you are reading, because this vocabulary will have a massive, massive impact on them. And then if it means that you don't spend those 20 minutes reading, but you spend 20 minutes exploring vocabulary, then fantastic. Just get a thesaurus out, find some more words, look and explore it, see if you can use it in a sentence, and then see if you can use it the next day, the day after, the week after that. Vocabulary is so, so crucial. So it's often, we're thinking about reading with children at home, it can just be looking at vocabulary and getting these words together and getting that range of words up. And you'll probably find they quite enjoy it as well. I was probably a little bit sad, but I used to like reading thesaurus when I was a kid. I don't know why, but I used to do it, sit down at thesaurus and then get lots of different words out and write them all down and see what they meant. And some children will probably actually love doing that. It takes away that pressure from reading. So yeah, have a thesaurus, have a dictionary at hand. Show a model again that we don't know what every word means, because we never will know what every word means. It's an impossibility to understand every single word in the vocabulary. It's about modelling that lifelong learning, really, and then children can take again their reading further from that. And yeah, just a massive, massive thank you as well, not just for coming, but not just for lockdown, which has been, you know, a massive challenge for you all, but throughout, as it, you know, throughout the career they've had us with. So thank you very, very much for sharing interest in the children's learning, because it is all about working together, really. If we work together, then we can make sure they are successful for the future, which is what we all want, really. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope that you found that interesting, and you've gone away with some tips. It's about really finding what works for you and your family. So Mr. Press talked there about your children reading out loud to you. My girls are in year 6 and year 8, and I cannot get them to read out loud to me. They will not do that. No matter how much I say to them, I'd really love to hear them read, they won't. So I just do a different thing. I give them reading challenges. They like to have, well, can you give me a reading challenge tonight, Mum? So I give them can you get to this page by the time you get to bed, or while I'm at work, can you read this chapter? And then I help them to choose the next book as well, which works for us. It might not work for you, but there's just, you've got to try and find your way with that, really. So hopefully, I mean, the teachers are working really hard to make sure that we keep reading alive and we keep remote learning going. We know it's really hard for everybody. It's hard for you, it's hard for the kids, it's hard for the staff as well. We have got a glimmer of hope in the 8th, and as soon as we have any other information, we'll let you know about that. But just thank you very much for your time, and just keep going with it. And if it's the one thing that you do every day, you know, that it is really, like I said, the master skill. So thank you.